Welcome to Nice and Blunt. My name is Adam Riancho, and these are my quarterback, tight end, and defensive rankings for week 2. I'm running out of daylight, so I'm going to try and do this quickly. Let us begin. We're at quarterback. Obviously, Jordan Love is not available. That's a bummer. And this week kind of gets a little dicey in terms of the matchups, especially outside the top 15. But at number 1, this is a very obvious rank. It's still Josh Allen. He is unquestioned at number 1 until one of these weapons steps up. This is the Josh Allen show, and he's still clearly the best fantasy option you can find. Number 2, though, I'm going with Lamar Jackson versus the Raiders this week, and I do not expect him to run it 16 times per game, but the Raiders won't be able to stop him. I'm not worried at all. After the loss, they will win comfortably. Number 3, I have Jalen Hurts versus the Falcons, and a few miscues with the center last week did raise some eyebrows. He was not as effective on the tush push, but the offense still looked good overall, and they probably dominate on Monday Night Football against Kirk Cousins. They could hang another 30-plus points like last week, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. So still going to trust him. I still think at worst, he's top 5. Number 4, I got Anthony Richardson at Green Bay, and the Packers defense knows they have to step up without Jordan Love if they have any chance to compete. But Richardson can throw deep bombs all game long, and he can also run for 50-plus yards really easily. I think he's locked in as a top 5 quarterback all year long. Let's hope he stays healthy. That's the only way I don't rank him as such. Number 5, I'm going with Jayden Daniels versus the Giants, and the Giants defense doesn't scare anyone, and if he remains the main goal line back, we're in line for league-winning potential here. I just hope that he as well does stay healthy. That's the only way this doesn't work out with Daniels. But number 6, I think if you're paying attention, you've noticed a trend here. I'm just ranking the quarterbacks with rushing value clearly at the top, and Kyler is going to give every opponent headaches all year long. There's shootout and upset potential in this game, and I'm sure he's very happy that Aaron Donald retired. So Kyler at number 6, I think he's a great start against the Rams. Number 7, I have Patrick Mahomes versus the Bengals, and he barely ran the ball in week 1, but there's extra time to prepare, and Rice and Worthy look very good. Imagine the upside once Kelce gets going and Hollywood is fully healthy. He's a must start every single week. Number 8, I have CJ Stroud versus Chicago, and it's not the best matchup here, but his wide receiver trio makes him pretty much matchup proof every single week. He's going to be a top 10 option no matter what, and he probably plays elite in prime time on Sunday night. I am not going to bench CJ Stroud. Number 9, I have Dak Prescott at home versus New Orleans. And if his defense plays as well as they did against the Browns, then Dak might not have to do very much in order to win. But I do not fear New Orleans at all. I'm a little concerned about Ferguson's injury, but I think he'll be fine. And normally, whenever Dak plays at home, he looks like an MVP candidate. So just trust him. Pretty unlikely that he burns you at home. You know he's a safe play week in, week out. Number 10, I have Jared Goff versus Tampa Bay, and last year he averaged 20.9 points per game at home, but that was not the case in week 1 because St. Brown and LaPorta never really got going. It could turn into a shootout versus the Bucs though, so I still trust his floor, and I'm going to bet he gets back to lighting it up in a home game at Detroit in the Dome. I think St. Brown has a massive bounce back, and Goff is still a top 10 play. Number 11, though, I'm going with Tua Tagovailoa versus Buffalo, and he's actually really bad in this matchup against Buffalo. In his last 4 games, he only averages 12.8 points per game, but at the end of the day, it's September in Miami, and I think that's what you have to lean into. With Tua, that's definitely the better, more ideal circumstances for him in fantasy. So I think he puts up a good game, and especially without Mostert, this offense will heavily operate through the passing game. A-Chain also put up most of his yardage last week in the receiving game, and that's going to pad to his stats all year long. So last week, he was the only quarterback to throw for over 300 yards, and if you have that bonus in your scoring format, I think he might throw for another 300 once again. But this could be a very low-scoring divisional game on Thursday night. Historically, in Miami the last 2 years, the average score is 20-17. So this could be a bad spot, but I think with his upside, with his passing volume, I think you have to trust Tua and his talent. It's September. The weather is not a factor. Number 12, I have Baker Mayfield at Detroit, and I still do not trust the Lions secondary. Their run defense is good though, so in what is likely a back and forth offensive matchup, Baker is going to lean on the wide receivers once again, and last week he threw for 4 touchdowns. I'm not expecting him to be that good, but I think he's a very legit streamer for the second week in a row. We might see him in the top 15 very consistently this year with those weapons. Number 13, I have Joe Burrow at the Chiefs, and I don't want to completely overreact to week 1. This offense did look terrible, but especially without Higgins, I think that's the main reason why. I don't think Burrow can put up top 10 numbers though on a defense like the Chiefs if Higgins is unavailable. So monitor his status. If he does play, I'll probably bump up Burrow maybe as high as number 10, but probably not any lower than 11. So we'll see about that. But if it doesn't happen, that's what I'm assuming with this ranking, then I don't think I can put him in the top 12. But I do think it's a close game. There's a chance he bounces back in a major way. He still has Jamar Chase, and you know the Cincinnati Bengals do step up against arguably their biggest rival in the NFL. So I think he's still a legit play, just more of a high-end streamer rather than a lock in the top 10. Number 14, I have Brock Purdy at Minnesota, and Purdy clearly loses some value and upside without McCaffrey because Jordan Mason does not catch passes. Christian McCaffrey catches a lot, but I thought that he played very well against a top secondary in the league on Monday in week 1, and he should look even better at Minnesota. It's not the same caliber defense, and especially once Ayuk gets going, we will see the full potential be unlocked. He didn't throw a touchdown in week 1, and that will change in week 2. He will have a higher floor this week. Number 15, I have Matthew Stafford at Arizona, and I know he does not have Puka, and his O-line is also banged up, but Stafford will find a way. I see some shootout potential in this game, and Kyron can also catch passes as well. So I'm going to trust the floor. Combined with the upside, he's a pretty safe top 15 quarterback this week. Moving forward, though, is where it gets a little dicey, and that's why I'm going with Justin Fields at Denver. Honestly, the position is going to be very ugly moving forward, so even though Fields may not throw a touchdown again, he doesn't have to in order for them to win. He also didn't turn it over last week, and that was very encouraging. He's going to run for another 50-plus yards easily every single matchup, so just bank on the rushing value, and anything through the air is going to be considered a bonus. I think from a floor standpoint, he's not bad, and there is some 20-point upside. If he breaks off like a 60-yard rushing touchdown, you'll be very happy. So good luck with that, but at least the floor, I think, is locked in to top 20 production. Number 17, I have Trevor Lawrence versus the Browns, and the offense looked solid in the first half last week, but it was scoreless in the second half against the Dolphins, and I think at home they get all of their weapons involved. I don't think Kirk and Engram look like a non-factor, and I do think Lawrence will have a decent game if that happens. The Browns defense is not an easy matchup though, but his rushing value boosts the floor, and that's why I think he's a decent top 20 play this week. He's fine, just not elite. Number 18, I have Sam Darnold versus San Francisco, and he looked good last week. I know it was the Giants, and this is the Niners, but it is his former team. He has the best wide receiver in the NFL, and at home, I think they have some decent scoring drives and keep it somewhat competitive. I think it is a one-score game when it's all said and done. The interceptions might look egregious, however, but I think he can compensate in terms of fantasy points with some cheap yardage in probably some garbage time. But you're about to see how risky this position gets, and Darnold is a safe floor. With some upside this week, you could do a lot worse. At number 19, I have Caleb Williams at Houston, who looked fucking terrible in week 1. I would like to rank him higher, but I just don't think I can do that until we see him play well. Rome might also be out this week, and Keenan is also dealing with a heel injury already. So for someone who claims to not get nervous, he looked really fucking nervous in his NFL debut against the Titans. And they do have a legit secondary. I don't want to discount the Titans' corners at all. But at some point, Caleb will bounce back, but the pressure of Sunday night at the Texans doesn't feel like his best game on the season. We got to wait for him to prove it in order to rank him back in the top 12. I was a little too excited last week, and this week I am pumping the brakes. At number 20, I got Justin Herbert at Carolina, and he barely had to do anything in the passing game for them to win. But the Panthers are dog shit, and they just gave up 47 points to Derek Carr and the Saints. Herbert could torch them for 3 touchdowns easily if this gets out of hand, and I'm a little worried about their emphasis on the run. But at some point, Herbert will fire that cannon of his, and why not this week? I think the floor is pretty high because I don't see him turning it over either. So he's top 20, but it doesn't feel great. He might throw for less than 150 yards once again. Moving forward, though, I think you're benching all of these guys. I got Geno Smith at 21 on the road at the Patriots, and he kind of struggled, honestly, at home versus Denver. He bailed you out with a 30-plus yard touchdown run, but otherwise there was nothing really to write home about. And he does have good weapons, though, so he does offer a little upside. I'm just quite worried that this team traveling across the country to face the Patriots, who just stomped the Bengals, I think they win, but it's probably on the back of Kenneth Walker and not Geno. I think he's only viable in 2 quarterback leagues, and even then, he's kind of a lower-end option. So no thanks with Geno, and I don't think you're starting Daniel Jones, but holy shit, at this point, you are just chasing matchups. This is the best matchup you could possibly ask for, so if you're desperate enough, maybe take a swing on him, but it's really just the fact that they were the worst defense against the pass all of last year, and they just let Baker throw for 4 touchdowns on them again. So I don't think they can stop Malik Neighbors. At least you're getting something there. He probably turns it over, but the rushing value has to return if he has any chance of keeping his job for a while. The matchup is the only reason I'm upgrading him. This is still usually no-go territory, however, outside the top 20. Is pretty desperate. So good luck with Daniel Jones, but yikes. Feels pretty brutal. At number 23, I have Malik Willis versus the Colts, and there's a world where he is the worst quarterback on the week, but I'm going to trust his rushing value along with Matt LaFleur's coaching and the weapons he has to throw to give him a sliver of upside and somewhat reasonable floor. I think like 12, 13 points is a fair projection, but I think he gets sacked a lot. I also think there could be multiple turnovers here, but if you told me that he ran for over 50 yards and got some easy touchdowns to Jaden Reed and Christian Watson on like some screen passes that do pop off, I wouldn't be completely shocked. I don't think he's going to be atrocious, but there's no way he's like fantastic. So at 23, what are you actually like betting on? It's probably not someone you're starting in a typical format. At number 24, I have Aaron Rodgers, though, at the Titans, and he can still throw it, but he cannot run to save his life. It's not the best matchup possible, but after the week 1 loss, they probably bounce back. I just think they lean on Breece Hall in order to do it. So I think he has a very capped ceiling this week, and at least he's not going to turn it over, but honestly, against this Titans secondary, that's not a guarantee. He might have one miscue in this game. Number 25, I have Kirk Cousins at Philly, who looked like the Achilles was still a lingering problem for him in week 1. This defense is not scary, but we know he crumbles in prime time, and this is Monday Night Football. I have very low expectations for him in week 2. Number 26, I'm absolutely benching Gardner Minshew, even in a 2-quarterback league. We all know that Minshew is limited, and on the road versus Baltimore, there's no fucking chance that they win the game. You're hoping for some garbage time and for Adams to step up, but Bowers does help his floor a little bit. That's the only silver lining with Minshew. Number 27, though, I got Derek Carr at Dallas, and I think this could be terrible. I know Watson is bad, but I think he looked even worse because the Cowboys' defense is that legit. This is the most obvious fall from grace of the week. Saints scored 47 last week, and they might not put up 10 in week 2. So stay away for sure. I do not trust Derek Carr. I also do not trust Will Levis versus the Jets. He just can't help himself, can he? Their defense might keep them in games this season, but he's going to find a way to turn it over and cost them the lead. This matchup is brutal, and it's inevitable that he fucks up this week. No, thank you with Will Levis. Number 29. Oh, God. Deshaun Watson at the Jags. There isn't an ounce of redemption here, is there? He plays like shit, and then there's another lawsuit regarding sexual harassment that pops up. Just cut him. I know the cap situation is going to be awful, but just end the misery right now. There's no need to prolong it. The Browns have no shot with Bill Cosby at quarterback. So just bring in your comic relief quarterback. It's going to be a lot more entertaining with Jameis Winston under center.
As a kid, my passion was always football. I didn't realize that my passion was playing football.
And just try to enjoy the ride as best you can. We all know it's going to happen eventually, but I get it. They probably cannot do that in week 2. I think they should, though. I really think they might as well just rip the cord right now and just move on. I don't see this ever getting better with Deshaun. Number 30, though, I have Jacoby Brissett versus Seattle, and it was a nice win in week 1, but not thanks to Brissett's passing ability. He does run it a little bit, and at home, maybe the crowd adds some juice, but Seattle's defense looks legit. I do not envision them scoring more than 17 points, and we all know the upside here just doesn't exist. So no fucking chance. And then at 31, this is truly the fuck no territory. I had some slight belief in Bo Nix last week at Seattle, but in week 2 against Pittsburgh is going to be ugly as fuck to watch. And if you're a Bronco fan, yeah, I'm sorry for what you're about to witness, but there's no chance you're getting cute. Do not even consider starting Bo Nix this week. Number 32, though, lastly, with Bryce Young versus the Chargers. Now you're just asking to lose, and what is there to be excited about in Carolina? I guess Jonathan Brooks getting healthy, but Bryce doesn't look fit to be on an NFL field. He's just not that caliber of athlete, and I really hope I'm wrong and he can salvage something this year, but I kind of think they're going to pivot to Andy Dalton by like Thanksgiving. I think clearly the answer with Bryce is fuck no. Let's move on, though, to tight end, where it's an interesting situation this week, especially with a guy like Andrews, but we'll get to him later. At number 1, I have Sam LaPorta versus Tampa Bay, and he was not a major factor in week 1, I understand, but there were very few tight ends that were, and I think both LaPorta and Amon-Ra do bounce back after Jameson had his big night in week 1. There's shootout potential in this divisional round rematch, and I think LaPorta is still the tight end 1 for a reason. That's why we drafted him this high, and he will flash some upside sooner rather than later. Number 2, I have Trey McBride versus the Rams, and 5 for 30 is not the best stat line, but 9 targets for him was very encouraging last week. For a while, it looks like Harrison is not a threat at all, and that makes him the best Arizona weapon that they have. Last year, that was elite. So he's at number 2. You cannot bench him. He's still a very safe play at tight end. Number 3, I have George Kittle at the Vikings, and CMC will be out once again, and Ayuk is still finding his mojo, so Kittle is bound to explode sooner or later. This could be the week where he gives you like 20 plus points in fantasy. Number 4, I have Travis Kelce versus the Bengals, and he's about to turn 35, and this team knows very well it's a marathon, not a sprint. They're going to keep him healthy for the playoffs. It is inevitable, though, that he has a massive game, but he's not the automatic number 1 tight end every week anymore. Trust the process and keep starting him. You're not going to bench him. We all know that that's not going to happen, but it wasn't fun to see Noah Gray put up more fantasy points than him in week 1, albeit barely, but he'll bounce back. He'll be fine. You're not going to bench Travis Kelce. Number 5, speaking of trust the process, I have Dalton Kincaid at Miami, and holy shit, that was frustrating to watch in week 1. Not a single target until mid 4th quarter. 1 catch for 11 yards was his final stat line, and I think it's just the craziness of week 1. Maybe they were saving him for this divisional game on Thursday night, but I still believe he is the alpha weapon in Buffalo, and I think it proves itself to be true in week 2. At least I hope it will. So trust the process here. He was a first-round pick for a reason, and he has some excellent games last year when called upon. The talent is undeniable, and it will eventually win out. I think it probably happens as soon as Thursday night. Number 6, I have Isaiah Likely, though, versus Las Vegas, and I told you last week that Likely was a dark horse to pop off. I did not expect him to be the tight end 1 on the week, but I did think that after his production last year, along with Andrew's car accident, that they would probably lean on him a bit extra early on, and I believed in him, but he far surpassed my expectations. He was exceptional in that game, and he's probably going to be a staple of this offense all year long. He looks like one of their most explosive weapons that they have. So he might have completely overtaken Andrews by a mile, but at least for now, he's clearly the better start until Andrews gets fully healthy. He's obviously a must start. The upside is far too high to ignore. And if you picked him up off of the waiver wire, congratulations, you might have a league winner on your hands. Number 7, though, I got Brock Bowers at Baltimore, and I was very impressed with Bowers' week 1 performance. I thought his preseason injury might slow him down a little bit, but he was third among all tight ends last week with 8 targets, and he also caught 6 for 58 yards. So he's legit. I think you can absolutely trust him. He was tight end 5 in scoring as well, and was the only one of that group without a touchdown. The floor is very safe for him moving forward. I would feel really good if I drafted Brock Bowers at a big discount compared to some of these other top 6, 7, 8 tight ends. Number 8, I have Colby Parkinson of the Rams at Arizona. And Puka is on IR, so Parkinson is one of the guys who needs to step up for the Rams, and he was pretty serviceable in week 1 with 5 targets. He's going to play a lot of snaps, so I think if you missed on Likely and Parkinson is still available on the waiver wire, he is clearly the next best replacement for injured guys like Njoku and Ferguson. So I think he's going to be top 10 for the next month until Puka gets back, and fire him up. I think the floor is pretty safe. He plays for Sean McVay, and Matthew Stafford is his quarterback. That's all I need to know. Number 9, I have Kyle Pitts at Philadelphia. He saved you with a touchdown, something he has struggled to do throughout his career up to this point, but I'm glad to see that at least. But without it, he would have been kind of unusable, just like the majority of tight ends last week. Only 3 targets was not encouraging, but at least he caught all of them. That was good to see. He was the tight end 2 in week 1, though, and he was also a lot better in fantasy than Drake London was. So I probably shouldn't complain, but Cousins and this offense seems a little bit scary of a safe proposition. We'll see how long it takes to fully get going. I'd like to see his volume go up before I rank him any higher, but you could definitely do worse. Let's hope he scores another touchdown against the Eagles. Number 10, though, I have Evan Engram versus Cleveland, and damn, Engram was an afterthought in week 1. You don't love to see it, but almost every tight end sucked in week 1, so I'm not going to hit the panic button completely. He should bounce back, but he's not the guy that scores a lot of touchdowns in general, so his ceiling is already kind of limited, and if the targets do drop off this year, then all the value we thought he offered would be gone. I think he'll be fine, but he's only my tight end 10 this week. He was my number 8 tight end coming into the season, and he is moving down the board just a little bit. So not the best option you can find, but watch him go off for like 6 for 70 yards this week and silence all the doubters. He could still be very safe. That wouldn't shock me at all. Number 11, I have Dallas Goedert versus the Falcons, and given the state of the position, Goedert was actually decent in week 1, going 4 for 31, but it's hard to imagine he does far better than that consistently moving forward. So he's a fine floor play, but like everyone else moving forward, I think you're just hoping for a touchdown every week, and that's kind of what we expected from him entering the year. It doesn't look like he offers much more upside than what we expected. Number 12, though, I have Mark Andrews versus the Raiders, and I don't want to completely overreact to week 1 and completely write him off, but he was better than Kincaid, and I still have Kincaid ranked top 5. But the difference here is that Kincaid does not have Isaiah Likely behind him on the depth chart ready to go alongside him, and Likely looks fantastic. You're not going to say that about Dawson Knox, and Kincaid is also far more athletic, so I don't think you're that comfortable with what you saw from Andrews. I'm hoping it was just the recent car accident that had him sluggish and sore for week 1. He's also coming off a leg injury from last year, but that's also a reason to be like very concerned about his long-term health. I think he can eventually reemerge as a legit option in the league, but he genuinely looked washed when he fell down untouched while trying to turn up field for an easy first down and couldn't even pick it up. I think everyone who drafted him got very concerned, and let's just hope that the problem fixes itself over time, and all he needs is just to get healthy and back to full strength. But he might never be the same guy that we remember. It's sad, but at tight end 12, I think he's barely a fringe starting option. If he's your best guy, though, I get it. If you're forced to start him, go ahead. But why didn't you pick up Colby Parkinson or Isaiah Likely off the waiver wire? At least try to do that. Come on, man. Help yourself out. Andrews does not feel safe at the moment. So I hope you were able to grab one of them, but if you didn't, I would feel very desperate for a backup tight end if Andrews was my main guy. Number 13, though, I have Jake Ferguson versus New Orleans, and I probably shouldn't even rank him, to be honest, because he hyperextended his knee and he's questionable for week 2. I do not think they need him to beat New Orleans, so might as well just rest up and get healthy. But if he does play, he's one of the last guys that offers some high upside. He wasn't elite in week 1, but they did lead big, and they didn't need him to really do anything in order to win comfortably. So he still probably scores 7 or 8 touchdowns on the year. I'm not going to cut him. I really believe in his talent. If I have the space, I'm trying to stash him for later on. He is still my ride or die at the position. Number 14, I have Juwan Johnson at Dallas, and now we're officially in streaming territory. And why not go with someone who scored a touchdown last week? I don't worry about Foster Moreau long-term, nor Taysom Hill. I think he's arguably the number 3 target in this offense every week, and you could do a lot worse outside the top 10 at the position. So pick him up if you need some depth. He will come in handy once bye weeks come around, and he is a valuable backup if you need one. Number 15, I have Pat Freiermuth at Denver, and while he wasn't terrible, he definitely wasn't special. I thought he would have a lot better chemistry with Russell Wilson entering the year, so Fields as the quarterback is not the best news. However, I'm mainly just worried about the touchdown potential in this offense. They kicked 6 field goals last week and won the game, so there's not much upside to begin with, and tight end value is heavily tied to touchdown production in the first place. So this is why I'm worried. Pickens is clearly the main target for Justin Fields, but with a Surtain matchup this week, maybe he looks for Freiermuth's direction a little bit more often in week 2. I'm not encouraged here, though. It's definitely not an ideal spot for Freiermuth. Number 16, I have Dalton Schultz versus Chicago, and they do have some elite corners on the Bears defense. So maybe this forces Stroud to look in Schultz's direction this week. He only got 3 targets in week 1, and that probably doesn't improve very much, but at least you can hope for a touchdown in this high-scoring offense. It's pretty rough at this point already, though. Good luck with Schultz. Number 17, now you're getting kind of desperate, aren't you? I got Mike Gesicki at the Chiefs, and if Higgins is officially ruled out, I might bump him up a couple spots, but there is some potential upside here even if Higgins does play, but he dropped a touchdown last week and he hasn't produced in nearly 3 years. He might be washed. I am a little worried about Gesicki, but there's not that many other options in Cincinnati right now. Number 18, I have Hayden Hurst at Carolina, and there was very little passing game in the Chargers offense, but Hurst had 2 catches for 33 yards, and it's hard to find a tight end ranked lower that performed better in week 1. So there is some potential here. It's also a revenge game. He played for the Panthers last year, and you could do worse than Hayden Hurst. Number 19, I have Zack Ertz, who is still a thing. Kingsbury trusts him in this Commanders offense, and at least for now, the rookie Ben Sennett is a complete non-factor. He didn't see a single target in week 1. Meanwhile, Ertz got 4, and he's strictly a check down option, but at least you know there's a sliver of volume that will go his way. He's not going to give you a bagel. Number 20, I have Taysom Hill at Dallas, and while he's not a traditional tight end, the new offensive coordinator is still using him in the run game. You're just hoping he scores a touchdown, but at least you won't get a bagel with Hill either. Number 21, I have Noah Fant at Seattle, and he did get 4 targets. That was something, but 2 catches for 11 yards is not exciting at all. You still have to bet on Geno Smith, and that's not a safe bet at the end of the day. Number 22, I have Hunter Henry versus Seattle, and Austin Hooper did have more catches than him. You don't like to see that, but you can also say that about every other Patriot as well. Hooper led the team in catches. At least they're using the tight end position, but you want them to use Henry, not Hooper. Number 23, I have Chig Okonkwo versus the Jets. And yes, he caught a touchdown last week, but otherwise wouldn't have pretty much done nothing. I will pass. I don't think he scores a touchdown consistently in this offense. Number 24, I have Cole Kmet at Houston. And if Rome doesn't play, then maybe he has some more upside, but this offense was gross. You cannot trust Kmet moving forward. Number 25, last player I'll mention at tight end is Tyler Conklin at the Titans. And damn, I was really hopeful that Conklin could be the number 3 target, but Lazard is the clearly favorite guy for that role. That's a bummer, but it's still early. Maybe he gets more involved moving forward. I still have a sliver of hope with Tyler Conklin. Let's move over to defense, though, and wrap up this video. And at number 1, I am definitely going with the Cowboys. They just looked as dominant week 1 as they did last year, and that was on the road. We all know they're a juggernaut at home versus New Orleans. It's a smash matchup. I think they're obviously the number 1 start this week. Number 2, I have the Ravens versus Las Vegas, who are coming off a loss in their home opener with extra time to prepare. Yeah, they're not going to let Minshew win his second game in a row in 2 years. So no chance that the Raiders put up more than like 15 points in this game. I think the Ravens are an elite option in week 2. Number 3, I have the Steelers at Denver, and they were phenomenal in week 1, and TJ Watt had another 2 strip sacks that were negated by penalty. So they're about to dominate a rookie quarterback in week 2, even though it's on the road. I think you have to start the Steelers no matter what. Number 4, I have the Chargers at Carolina, and it was shocking how they didn't change the personnel at all other than like Bud Dupree on defense. But with just a change at head coach, they are able to finally tackle their opponent, and the Panthers also look like they gave up after the first drive last week. So even all the way across the country, this is an automatic top 5 ranking. I think you have to start the Chargers if you're streaming the position. Number 5, I got the Jets at Tennessee, and they could not stop the 49ers at all in week 1, but they should bounce back and feast on Will Levis's mistakes. There's too much talent on this defense to fade them. You know you're starting the Jets this week. Number 6, I got the Seahawks at the Patriots, and the Pats actually put up a fight and won last week, but they still only put up 16 points on offense. Seattle looked good on defense last week, and I don't care that they're on the road all the way across the country. This is an excellent matchup, one that we will be chasing all year long for defensive streamers, and the Seahawks are a good play in week 2. Number 7, I got the 49ers at Minnesota, and there's a world where Sam Darnold actually puts up a very competitive fight against his former team, but there's also a world where he throws 4 egregiously bad interceptions, and I'll trust the talent in San Francisco to win out. Got to start them, but I do like a few other matchups more. That's why I only have them at number 7. The Niners have actually never won a game in Minnesota dating back to 1992. They're 0-7 on the Vikings home field. Number 8, I have the Jaguars versus Cleveland, and the Jags do not have an elite defense, but they held the Dolphins to 20 points in Miami. So I think anytime a defense faces Deshaun Watson this year, I'll be tempted to rank them top 10. This week, it's the Jags. Number 9, I have the Colts at the Packers, and I would have never ranked them this high against Jordan Love, but against Malik Willis, it's going to be tough for Green Bay to score more than 21 points, so I would expect some turnovers as well, and I do like the Colts as a top 10 option. Willis was only traded to Green Bay 3 weeks ago, so there will be a lot of miscues and growing pains. The Colts should capitalize. They have some talent on that defensive unit. Number 10, I have the Chiefs versus the Bengals, and they still have a very good defense, but something tells me the Bengals will play far better this week than they did against the Patriots. There is some risk that this is a 30-plus point shootout, and the Bengals do put up a good fight, but I would still trust Kansas City if I have them. Number 11, I got the Browns at Jacksonville, and Cleveland is now fully aware that their defense needs to play elite in order for them to have any chance to win. I don't think that unit will throw in the towel until they're like at least 2-8, and it's clearly like not going to work out midseason, but there's still a good option until that happens. The Cowboys were just a bad matchup last week. I still trust them as a solid play if you drafted them. Number 12, I have the Commanders versus the Giants, and this feels risky as fuck. I know the Commanders have a terrible defense and especially cannot stop anyone in the secondary, but it's Daniel Jones. Dan Quinn knows this division, and I think just like the Vikings, there's legit pick 6 potential, and they probably force multiple turnovers as well. They're not the worst streaming option you can find. Number 13, I have the Patriots versus the Seahawks, and Seattle has to travel across the country, so the Pats have a shot here. Their defense playing elite is the only chance they have to even compete, so who knows, maybe Gerard Mayo keeps them in the streaming conversation all year long. This week, I think they're top 15. Number 14, I have the Texans versus the Bears, and I'm not convinced that Caleb Williams will play terribly for much longer, but at least after week 1, you have to be a bit excited about the upside of this matchup. It's a little risky, but it does feel safe to finish as a decent top 15 option. I have them at 14. Number 15, I have the Titans versus the Jets, and the Titans defense is not the problem. They actually have a legit secondary and very good corners on this team, and they were dominant against the run last week as well, but now they get Breece Hall coming into town, and I don't think Rodgers throws a pick, so just a floor play. They probably hold them to like 21, but still lose. Number 16, I have the Eagles versus Atlanta and Kirk Cousins in primetime on Monday night, coming off an Achilles injury. Say no more. The secondary is not yet solved, but the run defense looks good. The pass rush might tee off just like the Steelers did last week. Number 17, I have the Broncos versus Pittsburgh, and the Steelers offense does not scare you at all, but the Broncos are flawed at the end of the day. Not the best start you could find. Number 18, I have the Lions versus the Bucks, and their pass defense is bad, but the run defense is pretty good. Plus, they're at home, so you could do worse. Number 19, I have the Bears at Houston, and if not for the Bears' talent, I might rank them last on the week versus the Texans, but they can still give you some turnovers and show up in fantasy. Just not going to press my luck versus Stroud. They're not a team I'm dying to start on defense. Number 20, I have the Giants at Washington, and the Commanders still have a rookie quarterback, and in division, it could be a low-scoring game. I'm probably going to pass, though. Number 21, I got the Packers versus the Colts, and Richardson is a beast, but they are very motivated to play well without Love. There is some potential upside with Green Bay. Number 22, I got the Panthers versus the Chargers, and the Chargers offense, let's face it, is not going to scare you, but they also may have already given up. The Panthers defense is not safe to start. Number 23 and 24, I have the Rams and the Cardinals in Arizona, and this game has shootout potential, so no way I'm going with either of these two options. I will pass. Number 25, I have the Dolphins versus Buffalo, and the Bills could possibly hang 35. It is at home, but I think it's too risky to bet on. However, these divisional games in Miami have been more low scoring than shootouts, so I might be too low on the Dolphins this week. Number 26, I have the Vikings versus the Niners, and without McCaffrey, they have a shot, but no way am I pressing my luck against Kyle Shanahan. Number 27, I have the Bills at Miami, and this feels like an inevitable shootout, not a defensive battle, so I think Miami wins, and that's why I have the Bills ranked lower. Number 28, I have the Bucks at Detroit, and the Lions at home will not be stopped, so no fucking chance. The Raiders at 29, on the road at Baltimore. Lamar is going to explode, but Las Vegas does have some talent. I don't want to completely write them off, but this week is not the week to start them. Number 30, I got the Bengals at the Chiefs, and I'm not testing Kansas City's offense. No thank you. Number 31, I have the Falcons at Philly, and this feels like a possible blowout, so not going to press my luck there. And then lastly, the Saints at Dallas. Fuck no, they're my last ranked defense. The Cowboys might win 47-10 just to show the Saints they are not a threat. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. But here on the screen are my top 20 at all three positions, and at quarterback I feel pretty safe with the top 12. I think once you hit Joe Burrow, it's a little bit dicey, but he is in the streaming conversation. And once you hit like Sam Darnold, you're really just praying for some upside and maybe some garbage time to help you out. But it gets really ugly, especially after Justin Herbert, and you got to be really desperate if you stream Daniel Jones. Even in a good matchup, I would not do that. But at tight end, I think the top 9 are like pretty much locks in your lineup. Evan Engram, probably not a guy you can bench either, but I'm a little worried about it. Once you hit Mark Andrews and Jake Ferguson, though, like, yikes. It is pretty ugly. At defense, though, I think there's quite a few good options, and probably the Commanders and Patriots are the last ones I would consider at 12 and 13. But good luck to you. I hope you win. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below, and I will answer them before kickoff. But my name is Adam Riancho. Thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.